While paper filters abound in the wider world of coffee brewing, finding one in a portafilter basket almost feels like sacrilege. After all, the metal portafilter basket with its precise, tiny filter holes is an essential and exclusive part of what makes espresso espresso, right? Well, some beg to differ, and Weber workshops are among those dissenters. Included with all of their baskets and portafilters, which we just received recently, you'll receive a puck screen and also a stack of paper filters. Once I'd finished tinkering with all their other accessories, I was still curious about them. Despite my fairly broad experience with the various puck prep techniques out there, I've never really spent much time playing with paper filters. I wasn't exactly opposed to them, but there was always a part of me thinking something like, if I wanted a paper-filtered coffee, I'd just pull out my AeroPress or make a pour-over. Well, today I'll be putting aside my paper-thin apprehensions and putting them to the test. So what do the proponents say the benefits are? Well, Weber cites a few. First, that the paper filters prevent the clogging of the holes of the portafilter basket while brewing, resulting in a more even extraction. Second, that this allows you to use a finer grind, enabling higher extractions without fear of clogging or channeling. Paper filters also have a few other effects. For one, they create a slight gap between the bottom of the puck and the portafilter basket, allowing for maximum flow of water through the puck. They also slightly reduce the amount of larger solids and fats that make their way into the cup, making for a slightly cleaner tasting shot. You could compare this to the difference between French press and pour over, but much, much less dramatic due to both coffee particle size and the pressure involved. I'm coming to this little experiment with a minor hypothesis, that paper filters will be slightly more beneficial at higher brew ratios. In my mind, being able to produce a 1-to-3 shot with a finer, more consistent grind means higher extraction and clearer flavors in a slightly less intense shot. Generally, that's what I prefer anyway, and I could also see the effects on mouthfeel being beneficial here. This experiment is dead simple. First, we'll dial in our coffee for a few different ratios, 1-to-1, 1-to-2, and 1-to-3. Then we'll pull a couple shots at each ratio. We'll observe how the shots pull and judge them on taste. It is somewhat of a subtle difference, but I feel like the one without the paper filter comes on a little stronger, a little sharper at the beginning. The paper filter one feels a little bit more rounded off. It's difficult for me to separate them. I would say overall for something this potent, it seems like it's a bit difficult to tell the difference between the one that was pulled with paper and the one without paper. They're both good shots, but having a little bit of a hard time telling if there's any huge impact here. These two definitely have a more noticeable difference. The filterless, paper filterless 1-to-2 shot still has great brightness, balance of acidity, but there's something about the paper filtered shot. It doesn't stick around in quite as harsh of a manner. It does feel like what I hypothesized, which is that it would sort of smooth out and result in a clearer shot on slightly higher ratios. I think at this concentration, it's much more noticeable that the solids in the coffee are sticking around, hanging on the tongue. Whereas on this, it feels just a little cleaner. It kind of rolls off in a way that feels more like a cup of filter coffee, but while still having the body of espresso. I'm honestly not sure which one I prefer. The paper filter one feels just a little bit more pleasant, a little bit less harsh in a way that at least I enjoy. Yeah, it's also hard to say if that's coming down to just some solids and some fats being left out, or is that down to difference in extraction based on the different size particles that you get when you're grinding in a slightly coarser versus a slightly finer setting for the same overall recipe. Interesting result, opens up, again, a lot more questions that I'm eager to dig into. That's actually a surprising difference. Wow. Yeah, right off the bat, these two were very different. As I sort of hypothesized, that difference between sort of a French press vibe and a pour-over vibe, obviously a totally different territory. But this sits on your tongue way heavier, and I think there's just a higher preponderance of heavier, larger particles that are sitting on your tongue. This doesn't really have that, and it falls off in a really smooth way. Kickstep might not be my first choice to have a 1-to-3 shot like this. but it's surprisingly smooth and pleasant on this. The refractometer is showing a slight difference in TDS here. We've got 7.95 versus 8.3 on the paper filter side. So we are getting higher extraction when we use the paper filter, which is what we expected to see. And there's definitely a benefit to flavor. It is interesting to me that it's so much more obvious. I kind of guessed that it would be more apparent at a higher ratio, but the difference is shocking to me. At the 1-to-1, I almost couldn't make it out, but here it's immediately apparent. And I have to say, I like it a lot better. If I'm pulling a large ratio shot, I might have to incorporate paper filters. Yeah, it's really nice. It is interesting. I think if you are thinking about using paper filters, first of all, give it a go, because it's a very easy, cheap way to have some fun with experimenting with different recipes. But I think if you're more a fan of a tight ristretto type shot, you may not see as much difference as you will with a slightly longer shot. If you enjoy drinking your shots straight, definitely try a paper filter out. But this could be different across different grinders, different coffees. I'm curious if you all are playing with paper filters, what experiences you've had. But at the end of the day, it's definitely a worthwhile experiment to try at home and see where you fall on it. Are you pro paper filter, or do you think it's kind of a little bit of a waste of time? A little note on flow rate for those following along at home. Putting a paper filter basket is going to increase flow rate, so expect to have to fine up your grind a little bit for your first few shots. Additionally, if you're using the WEBER baskets like we are, that additional filter surface area actually makes a huge difference in terms of flow rate. Between the two, I had to adjust our grind setting significantly finer than where it was for our stock setup. It might take a bit more testing before I feel totally convinced about the utility of this, but as a general rule, being able to control more variables opens up more possibilities. So I'm immediately excited about all of this. One of the things I love most about paper filters is that they're accessible. Whether you're running a budget setup or trying to outcompete your local cafe, you can pick up a pack of these and run the exact same experiments we did here. It's a fun way to spice up your espresso routine, and who knows, you might end up being a big fan of paper filter shots too. I don't see myself using them for every shot, but I'll certainly keep them on hand to pop into my basket when I want a higher ratio espresso to drink straight, since it means I won't even have to change my grind setting. If you've incorporated paper filters into your espresso routine, let me know how you use them in the comments. Seems like there's a broad array of opinions on these, so I'm genuinely curious how folks are using them. I hope this got you excited about the possibility of using paper filters in your home espresso routine. To keep up with our future filtration experiments, be sure to subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.